Good morning and happy Sabbath. I think we should invite our sister to keep singing. I think that would do very much well for our soul. This morning, before I really get into the message, I want to share with you the small experience I had on our trip to visit my stepbrother and sister in California. Not stepbrother, I don't know how to... They're my brothers, half-brother and all that stuff, they're my brother and sister. So Amen. We were down in California, but before that, our trips, my wife and I, our trips usually consist of making a few stops because you get to see more people that way, and you try to, it's a long ways from home, so you do your best to visit as many people as you can. So we're actually in Portland at the time, heading down to San Jose, California. So I text my brother and my sister. I let them know this is a Sunday morning. I let them know that I'll be there Monday afternoon. What's the best time to meet with you? It's around 5:30, they say. Sounds good. So I'm heading down Monday. We're getting close, and I text the number that I had. I text and I said, hey, can you resend your address? Because I had it in my computer, and I didn't have Wi-Fi, so on and so forth. So I asked for the address again. The response that I get in a few minutes later was, what address? And I keep driving, we're getting closer, and I said, the address to your home. And the response that I got a few minutes later was, I moved to a lovely house, don't ever text this number again. And I'm losing my Christianity at this moment, and my wife's like, just calm down, so on and so forth, and I'm just, things are, thoughts and coming to my mind. But I said, okay, you know what, let's do something. So I pull over, I find a spot where I had internet. I got my computer out, checked my Facebook. Turns out the night before, my sister's service had changed, and she got a new number. And so I had the new number. I texted her. She sent me the address. We got to meet. We got to see each other, and it was a blessing. So it truly is important to have all the lines of communication open, and just thank God that it went well. But truly, when we were this close, to get a text message like that really threw me off. So thank the Lord that it all worked out, and it was truly a blessing to see them. Pray for them, and so I just pray that you would keep them in your prayers as well. So as we begin our message, I want you to keep a thought in your mind just to kind of get us thinking. I've heard this said before. It says the following: the chains of habit are too light to be felt until they are too heavy to be broken. The chains of habit are too light to be felt until they are too heavy to be broken. In previous messages, we've covered the early parts of Solomon's life. We've seen how, before I forget, I need to make sure I do a little warning. This message today, I think, has some, I'm going to try to keep it as PG as possible, but there may be a part where it can get, I don't know the word, but I don't want people to misunderstand me. Nowadays, people get offended, and that's a part of life, and if it does, I apologize. I'm just making sure I make that warning out there because we do have visitors, and I would definitely don't want our visitors to misunderstand the message, and I will do my best to explain myself if I have to. So, in previous messages, we've covered early parts of Solomon's life. We've seen how Solomon was anointed and proclaimed king in the closing years of his father David's life. When we saw that in his youth, Solomon made David's choice his own, which was to serve and honor the Lord. Above every earthly good, he desired wisdom and understanding for the accomplishment of the work that God had given him to do. And God granted his request, and the speech pleased the Lord that Solomon had asked this thing. Behold, I have done according to thy words. Lo, I have given thee wise and understanding heart, so that there is none like thee before thee, neither after thee shall arise like unto thee. And with this blessing, the long-cherished plan of David to erect a temple to the Lord, Solomon wisely carried out. This also was met with God's approval. Now, when Solomon had made an end of praying, fire came down from heaven and consumed the burnt offering and the sacrifices, and the glory of the Lord filled the house. Gifted with this heavenly wisdom, wisdom that excelled the wisdom of all the children of the East Country and all the wisdom of Egypt, the biblical record tells us that the kings and peoples from all the earth came to hear of this wisdom. This fame was so great that the Queen of Sheba came to prove Solomon, and this was her response. Howbeit I believed not the words, until I came and my eyes had seen it. And behold, the half was not told me. Thy wisdom and prosperity exceeded the fame which I have heard. She also said, Blessed be the Lord thy God, which delighteth in thee to set thee on the throne of God, because the Lord loved Israel forever. Therefore made he thee king to do judgment and justice. She was impressed by what she saw and heard, correct? But something happened along the way. And for a time, Solomon's life changed for the worse. And Solomon did evil in the sight of the Lord, and went not fully after the Lord as did his father. He went on a binge, if you will. He went on a binge with women, with money, and to provide for this lifestyle, he overtaxed his people. Somebody had to pay for it, correct? We need to think about that the next time we vote for politicians. Just a thought. The points we're going to cover this morning are found, or at least to start, we can go to Deuteronomy 17. Deuteronomy 17, verse 16. And some of the points that I'm going to cover this morning, dealing with Solomon's life, the danger of multiplying horses. Think on that one for a second. The danger of multiplying horses. Women are not the problem. Sin is. And the danger of pride and prosperity. If you go to Deuteronomy 17, verse 16, you see a verse at the beginning of that verse. It says, But he shall not multiply horses to himself, nor cause the people to return to Egypt. Now these are the things which Solomon should have known. He would have warning on this, and we will see later on that he was not ignorant of these commandments. So this is a warning from God. Think about this. This is in Deuteronomy 17. This is only 40 years approximately from when the children of Israel are coming out of Egypt. And God, foreseeing the future, says, in case we ever get a king, this is the warning, this is the commandments, this is the restrictions we're going to place on them. Now, what does this have to do with anything? Now, I looked around, and the Bible commentary from Albert Barnes, I believe it is, I used eSword. I was looking around, and it says this about the horses. The horse was not anciently used in the East for purposes of agriculture or traveling, but ordinarily for war. He appears constantly in Scripture as the symbol and embodiment of fleshly strength and the might of the creature. Another commentary from John Wesley tells us, though he might have
horses for his own use, yet he was not to have many horses for his officers and guards, much less for war, lest he should trust in them. And if you know Psalm 20 verse 7 tells us the following. Some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we will remember the name of the Lord our God. So this was a prohibition for him to not begin to trust in his military might. In his military might. Now, we may not have an army, we may not be in charge of a government, so on and so forth, but it's still a commandment in the sense that we need to understand and ask ourselves, who and what do we trust in? There's going to be a financial class coming up in the next few weeks, and I'm no expert at financial things, but certain folks come to a time frame in their life where all they are planning for is their Social Security retirement. Brothers, don't trust in the government for your retirement. You need to be responsible for that. And that's something I'm learning now, and I pray that you will begin to make plans accordingly as well, if the Lord should tarry. Just reading a quote here from Prophets and Kings. As a safeguard against dependence on the arm of flesh. So why was this prohibition given? As a safeguard against dependence on the arm of flesh. The Lord had warned those who should rule over Israel not to multiply horses to themselves. But in utter disregard of this command, Solomon had brought horses out of Egypt. Now there's twofold to this commandment. It says, but he shall not multiply horses to himself, nor cause the people to return to Egypt. Once again, this was given in the time when they had just got out of Egypt. But even in Solomon's time, you can say it applies. Why? Let's see the one or two commentaries again, and it says the following. The multiplying of horses is also forbidden, lest it should raise to a great correspondence with Egypt, which furnished Canaan with them. God's instruction was clear: do not do business with them. Their influence will affect the way you live your life. And that's a commentary from John Wesley. So once again, this was God trying to prohibit them or help them not go back. Let's apply it this way. God is calling us not to go back to our old ways. Don't go back to the darkness. Don't go back to Egypt. There are certain ties, and I've mentioned this before, there are certain ties from our past that may need to be cut away, because when we go back, that influence will affect us. And as we've already mentioned, the chains of habit are too light to be felt until they are too heavy to be broken. So that was, a principle of teaching the kings to trust in the Lord and not in their might. So that's one prohibition or one thing where Solomon disobeyed the Lord. Now, I gave you the little warning that I was giving you, and the second point was talking about women are not the problem, sin is, or disobedience. One of the main reasons that is cited for Solomon's fall is the woman he married, and they tend to get a bad rap. That's fine. But my question to you is the following. Who forced Solomon to do this? Was Solomon ignorant of God's commandments? No. Deuteronomy 17. We're there. If you're still there, Deuteronomy 17:17. It tells him, neither shall he multiply wives to himself, that his heart turn not away. And it shall be, when he sitteth upon the throne in his kingdom, that he shall write him a copy of this law in a book, out of which it is before the priest and the Levites. So he was not His father himself, if you go to 1 Kings, his father himself gave him the warning, or the reminder, better yet. 1 Kings chapter 2. 1 Kings chapter 2. David's talking to Solomon. Says, verse 1, Now in the days of David drew nigh that he should die, and he charged Solomon his son, saying, I go the way of all the earth, be thou strong, therefore, and show thyself a man. And keep the charge of the Lord thy God to walk in his ways, to keep his statutes and his commandments, and his judgments, and his testimonies, as they are written where? In the law of Moses. So he was not, there was somehow, some way, he had to have had information on this. And if he didn't, that would have been very, very hard to believe. But nonetheless, it's there. So he was told that he was not to do this. But King Solomon loved many strange women, together with the daughter of Pharaoh. The question then arises, where do we put our affections? Sentimentalism can place us in tough situations. Who do we choose, God or his commandments? Now, this does not change the fact that they had a part to play. But it is sure hard to not miss the fact that it was Solomon, not the woman, that had been told that this was not right. I want to read to you from Prophets and Kings again, talking about Solomon's vain hope. Now, this is kind of a warning, you can say, for the young people who have not entered into marriage. You can also say it can be for those that have more experience, that have not been married or have been married. Whatever the case is, it's still a warning for all of us, as we will see. It says, Solomon flattered himself that his wisdom and the power of his example would lead his wives from idolatry to the worship of the true God. And also that the alliance thus formed would draw the nations round about him into close touch with Israel. Wow, did he not have a good purpose? Did he not have a good purpose? He thought his influence was going to win these people to the Lord. And that is true to some degree. That can happen. But he thought in his own power, in his own strength. Vain hope, it says. Now, listen to why it's vain hope. Solomon's mistake in regarding himself as strong enough to resist the influence of heathen associates was fatal. And fatal too, the deception that led him to hope that notwithstanding a disregard of God's law on his part, others might be led to revere and obey its sacred precepts. Did you hear what I just said?
Yes.
It says this, Solomon's mistake in regarding himself as strong enough to resist the influence of heathen associates was fatal. And fatal too, the deception that led him to hope that notwithstanding a disregard of God's law on his part, so because I'm breaking God's commandment, thinking that, well, if I'm doing it for a good purpose, it's going to come out good at the end. No, it says the opposite. Notwithstanding a disregard for God's law on his part, others might be led to revere and obey its sacred precepts. His wives exerted a strong influence over him and gradually prevailed on him to unite with them in their worship. Solomon had disregarded the instruction that God had given to serve as a barrier against apostasy. And now he gave himself to the worship of false gods. He wasn't dealing with just one person. He was dealing with multiple influences on his life. Now, kind of as a side note, I just wanted to mention the following. Ladies, those who are mothers, those who are not, Do not underestimate the power of your influence for good. Mothers, God has entrusted you with the care of children, with the molding of their characters. And I dare say, please, don't allow the world or the feminist movement to dictate to you what success is or what your role in life is. That doesn't mean that that is all you are here to do. Don't misunderstand me. But if you are a mother, I still believe you have a strong influence for the good, for good, especially on those who you are caring for. Now, when bad things happen in society, people ask themselves the question, where have we gone wrong, or what's going on in the world, so on and so forth. I would dare to ask, who is educating the children? Who is influencing them? Solomon, at an age of manhood, was influenced to go to the wrong. How much more a little child? And just to get us thinking of how important it is to know who we associate with and to know, if you will, who we are marrying, but thinking about raising the children now or educating children, whether you have children or not, just the influence you will have on someone else. Just to get you thinking, in Austin, Texas, they had a big vote a few days to change their sex ed curriculum. That now starts in the 3rd grade. A child that is 8 years old in the 3rd grade. And the curriculum spans grades 3 through 8. Under the new curriculum, for the first time, the district will teach students about gender identity and sexual orientation and other things that I could not mention before you. And I couldn't believe it. But it's happening. And God has called us to stand for the truth, especially now. Amen. And the world still asks themselves, where are we going wrong? 3rd point, the danger of pride and prosperity. Having wealth, I want to make sure I mention this, having wealth is not a sin. But there are dangers, as we will see. If you go back to, I believe it's Deuteronomy 17, there's a commandment there given to the Israelites, and I believe it was given to Solomon as well. And it's the second part of verse 17. The second part of verse 17. It says, we've already read this, but neither shall he multiply wives to himself, that his heart turn not away. Neither shall he greatly multiply to himself silver and gold. Neither shall he multiply to himself silver and gold. Once again, whether we like it or not, there is a danger in prosperity. Does this mean that we cannot have it? That this does not mean that we cannot have it, but we must be aware of the dangers, and we shall see them. I want you to listen to a commentary from, I believe it's Albert Barnes. It says, in this 3rd prohibition, as in the other 2, excess is forbidden. Vast accumulation of treasure could hardly be effected without oppression, nor when effected fail to produce a pride and a trust in uncertain riches. Once again, that idea of trusting. Where are we placing our trust? Where is our affections being placed upon? Going to Prophets and Kings again. It says, the king's alliance and commercial relations with heathen nations brought him into, the king's alliance with commercial relations with heathen nations brought him renown, honor, and the riches of this world. He was enabled to bring gold from Ophir and silver from Tarshish in great abundance. Yielding to the temptations incident to his success and his honored position, he forgot the source of his prosperity.
Yes.
That is the danger. That is another danger. We know that, and we find that in Deuteronomy as well. He forgot the source of his prosperity. Another danger in having wealth. Listen to another quote here of how other things that affected Solomon with this situation. In ambition to excel all other nations in power and grandeur. Have you ever met that neighbor that just wants to have something more than you do? You get the new car, they want to get the new car. They get this, they want to have it as well. And I hate to admit it, or not me personally, but growing up, friends that we had, I knew of a friend and the neighbor, and it seemed like that was his issue. This neighbor over here on the left hand always wanted to have what the guy on the right hand had. It was like, what's his problem? And we were all friends, the children, we were all friends, but you could tell that sometimes there was this tension and, who's this and who has more, and it was just like, we're just trying to live the American dream, as they say. But anyway, the ambition. An ambition to excel all other nations in power and grandeur led him to pervert for selfish purposes the heavenly gifts hitherto employed for the glory of God. Listen to this. The money which should have been held in sacred trust for the benefit of the worthy poor and for the extension of principles of holy living throughout the world was selfishly absorbed in ambitious projects. The king of Israel should have been giving the example to the people and helping his fellow man and doing the things that the Lord had commanded, making Israel great in service, if you will, but he was too busy using it for his own personal ambitions. So first you forget there's a danger. Or better yet, the danger is you forget the source of your prosperity, then you begin to use God's means for selfish projects. So obviously if you forget where the means have come from, the prosperity, where the blessing has come from, then of course you're going to use the means for whatever you desire. Then there's no checks and there's no balance on that. You can use it for whatever selfish purpose you have. Once again, if the Lord has blessed you with having means and you know how to use it, hey, more power to you. God bless you. I believe that we are to be responsible with what God has given us. But there is a danger, and that's what we're talking about. The enormous revenues, going back to Prophets and Kings, the enormous revenues acquired through commerce with many lands were supplemented by heavy taxes. Amen. Thus pride, ambition, prodigality, thank you, the indulgence bore fruit in cruelty and exaction. So when you don't have money, you may not act a certain way. But when you have money, the true you comes out. So I pray that you would be very, very conscientious of that. From the wisest and the most merciful of rulers, he degenerated into a tyrant. Once the compassionate, God-fearing guardian of the people, he became oppressive and despotic. Tax after tax was levied upon the people. That means might be forthcoming to support the luxurious court. I got to read one more to you. There's just good material there, and I definitely want to share it with you. It says, in the midst of prosperity lurks danger. Throughout the ages, riches and honor have been attended with peril to humility and spirituality. It is not the empty cup that we have difficulty in carrying. Let me repeat that. It is not the empty cup that we have difficulty in carrying. It is the cup full to the brim that must be carefully balanced. Affliction and adversity may cause sorrow, but it is prosperity that is most dangerous to spiritual life. Unless the human subject is in constant submission to the will of God, unless he is sanctified by the truth, prosperity will surely arouse the natural inclination to presumption. So there's that challenge against humility. You lose that spirituality, and you begin to be presumptuous. So how or what can we do to prevent this from happening in our lives? If you go back to Deuteronomy 17, it tells us how we can do this. Same warning, the same commandment that was given to the kings of old can still apply to our lives. Deuteronomy 17, verse 18. And the Sabbath school was talking about it to some degree this morning, or at least what I believe it kind of connects. Deuteronomy 17, verse 18 says the following, and it shall be when he sitteth upon the throne in his kingdom, that he shall write him a copy of this law in a book. And what is he going to do? And it shall be with him, and he shall read therein all the days of his life. Taking the time for personal devotion. Sometimes in sermons when they say, oh yes, the importance of prayer, the importance of personal devotion, sometimes I'm like, yes, we know that. Yes, we know that. And guess what? You need to do it. My brother and I remember growing up, there were times when we'd talk and, hey, did you do this? Or you need to do this. Or I informed him of something. He said, yeah, I know, I see. He would always, I know, I see. But that was it. I know, I see, but that doesn't mean you're doing it. It's a matter of taking action. Because there's a principle we need to keep in mind. What goes in will come out. Okay? What goes in will come out. And if we're not putting in good things, then good things will not come out. So, the importance of personal devotion, taking this time to meditate on God's Word and not burying it somewhere. Taking that time, early morning if possible, afternoons, evenings, the times that you have, putting the Word of God in your heart. And it even tells us the benefit or the reason why we should do it. Verse 20 says that your heart, his heart, talking about the king, that your heart be not lifted up above his brethren, and that he turn not aside from the commandment to the right hand or to the left, to the end that he may prolong his days in his kingdom, he and his children in the midst of Israel. It's even talking about the descendants. This will affect your descendancy. This will affect the people that surround you if you take time out for the Lord. Maintain a spirit of self-sacrifice. Be willing to do acts of service. Prominent prophets and kings, prominent among the primary causes that led Solomon into extravagance and oppression was his failure to maintain and foster a spirit of self-sacrifice. This is not easy. It's not. Some have been educated to be able to do this a lot easier than others. Those that have grown up, don't misunderstand me, but if you've grown up in America, you have a lot more blessings than other people. So, everybody has their own bike, everybody has their own this, everybody has their own that. And when you go to different countries, you find out that not everybody has that. So, learning these things is important as you go through your life. And last but not least, obey God's commandments. James 4:7 says, therefore to him that knoweth to do good and doeth it not, to him it is sin. If Solomon, he must have known this. If he would have obeyed it, he would have followed through with the commandment, he would have saved himself a lot of trouble. Only obedience to the requirements of heaven will keep man from apostasy. Amen. So keep it in mind, different aspects of our life, right? We have our marriage, we have our finances, we have our health, if you will. What else do we have? Our spirit, just in general, our spiritual life. So we have these aspects of our life that make us whole. If we neglect certain areas, one will affect the other. So these requirements, only obedience to God's requirements of heaven will keep man from apostasy. God has bestowed upon man great light and many blessings. But unless this light and these blessings are accepted, there are no security against disobedience and apostasy. Let me read that last sentence again. God has bestowed upon man great light and many blessings. But unless this light and these blessings are accepted, there are no security against disobedience and apostasy. I finished with the story of the importance of walking in the Lord's commandments and His ways. I got this, if I remember right, it was from Doug Batchelor. Those who know him, he's a great evangelist, and he's been working with Amazing Facts for many years now. In one of his series, I believe there's a story he tells. There was two young boys, and they made a dare, They dared each other. You cannot stare at the sun longer than I can. So, little boys, so they make this dare, and there they are. They're going to make that. They made this little dare, and there they are, staring at the sun. Well, time goes by. They hurt their eyes pretty bad. They go to the doctor, and the doctor's asking them, "Why are you two staring at the sun?" And I'm paraphrasing. I don't remember the whole story, but this is basically what it's saying. The doctor asks them, "What were you two thinking? Do you know that all the damage you could have done, and so on and so forth?" And he tells them, "Boys, don't you know that the light is not to be stared at? It's supposed to be walked in." We are to walk in the Lord's light. May God bless us and keep us, because in this world there are many dangers. May God help us and keep us.